we have this very specific notion of cycling is, rather than, hey, everyone who's using a bicycle in one way or another is a cyclist, and we're this great community that everyone can join, the same way that automotive does, because people identify each other based on their car, right? It's like, oh my God, you drive a Mercedes. Yeah, me too. It's just, I don't understand why we make this very stark distinction and have this very set view on what cycling is and shouldn't be, rather than being super inclusive.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's the point that I like to have an answer on as well.
And I'm sure there's interests that I don't understand. I'm sure there's business interests, there's individual interests. I'm sure.
Welcome back to Ride to Success, the podcast that takes you on a learning journey to a productive, creative, and active life through the power of the bike. I'm your host, Pedro Couto Lopes. You can find me on LinkedIn under my own name. I'll leave a link on the show notes. And today's episode, we are chatting with Anna Buchmann, CEO and co-founder of NOCA, a leader whose journey from learning to ride a bike in her grandfather's garden to transforming digitalisation in the cycling supply chain is nothing short of inspirational. Now, before we get into the podcast, if you enjoy this conversation, make sure you follow the podcast and rate it wherever you listen to it. So you might be asking yourself, what's in it for me? If you ever faced setbacks, struggled to communicate your ideas, question your strengths, or wondered how to turn failure into fuel, this episode will give you practical tools you can apply today. Anna speaks openly about resilience, asking for help, navigating uncertainty, and building a company in the cycling industry, all while staying grounded through relationships, movement, and purpose. So stay with us until the end, because you'll learn two key things: a simple mindset shift to recover faster from failure, and how to identify your real strengths and use them with confidence. 2, why AI and data will reshape cycling and the cycling industry, and what that means for all of us. So this episode blends emotion, education, and entrepreneurial insight in the perfect ride to success spirit. So let's dive into the conversation with Anna Buchmann. Welcome, Anna, to Ride to Success. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Brilliant. Likewise. I wanted to start to understand and discover a little bit more about you as a person, your journey, because some people might not know who you are or what you do. So, can you describe in a few words, how did you get into the cycling industry, into the tech space, and you go for the first introduction to the bike, if you will.
God, first introduction to the bike. I think that's been very early on, when my granddad, in the backyard of his garden, taught me how to ride the bike. So that was really exciting. And then, so I'm from a relatively small town in Germany, and we rode to school with bikes every now and then. I hated it. Honestly, I hated it. I was sweaty at school. All my friends would be dropped off, and I'm like, why do I have to suffer bruises? So that was, honestly, as a teenager, I think sometimes you just hate things for no good reason. Then I rediscovered the bike for myself when I moved to Berlin in 2018. I was super scared to ride, to be honest, because it's a big city. You don't know your way around. You have to stop. You have to look where to go. But I did it because it was so much more freedom in moving around and being independent of cars. I love public transport, don't get me wrong. I think we should all be using public transport, but the bike has this additional feeling. It has this additional freedom. So personally,
that's the right word, freedom.
Exactly. Yeah. I lived in India for a year and a half, and I think one of my main struggles was actually mobility and getting around. So moving to Berlin from there was such a big change, and the bike was such a big factor to help me move around the city that, honestly, I still do it today. It's my main mode of transport. I see it as a mobility device. I do spinning in my free time. Shout out to my spinning ladies. But the bike with me is an absolute mode of transport. But working in the cycling industry honestly was also nothing that I could have imagined even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
My background is in economics. I thought if I want to change the world, I have to change the economic system because, right, that's what influences everything. And I was one of those really ambitious people who thought I could change the world. Let me tell you that.
You can do it. You can do it.
You can. I think the scope, the older you get, the smaller the scope really gets. And you understand that you have an effect on maybe the people around you, a specific ecosystem around you. But the reason I got into entrepreneurship in the end is because I saw how businesses can do good while still being financially viable businesses. So I supported entrepreneurs all around the world, in Kenya, in Brazil, in India, in the UK, in Germany. And I saw how innovation can be a driver for good. And then on a very, very random occasion, I met my co-founders and they dragged me into the cycling industry. It wasn't my fault, I promise. But I am incredibly...
So do tell, yeah.
But I'm incredibly grateful. So we actually started with building a bike. The NOCA, it is 4 wheels, electric, weatherproof, kind of the sustainable alternative to the car in the city. And it was really around helping people move goods, helping people move each other. So 2 people in 1 vehicle, basically, and bridge that gap. And I still think that there is a use case. I still think there's a market for it, but we realized how hard it is to build these kind of vehicles. And we saw how much potential there still is in the supply chain for digitalisation. And that's why we then pivoted into providing a software for better data management, very specifically product data management, because we saw that we could have a much larger impact that way.
Okay, really? Okay, you give a great overview of like the journey. Now we need to go and break these down a little bit so we can understand and kind of dive a bit more into the nuances. So I'm interested to go back a few steps to understand. You mentioned that you travel the world to help entrepreneurs with your economics background, and you lived in India for over a year. Like, what was the motivation behind it? Was it like your willingness to help others kind of build their own businesses, brands? Was that powered through a need that you had? What was the motivation, and why did you thought it was you were needed in helping these people and brands and across the world?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, it's curiosity. I think it's a pure curiosity for how things are working across the world and how things are working in a business, how things are working in a different country. So I come from a very privileged background in a way. My parents were able, like, it's not it's not super privileged, right? But I have a very good upbringing. My parents both worked full time. They were able to provide me with the opportunity to study abroad. And I always wanted to make the most out of that opportunity. So when you're provided with privilege, I strongly believe that you should use that to do good. And to do good, I think, can be in many different forms. Even normal businesses who don't necessarily have a social mission do good. They provide a service, they provide a product, they provide employment. And I think the business part in it, what really got me is the freedom to choose what you want to do and how you do it. It's both a bit of torture, because you don't know anything. You operate in a complete environment of uncertainty, and that is tough and that is hard, but it's also thrilling, it's exciting, it's challenging, and it gives you the opportunity to really grow as a person, and as I said, to then hopefully provide a product or service that makes someone else's life easier. And sure, honestly, a data software is not necessarily the first thing I would have thought about. But in the end, it is about providing customer value, right? And making someone's life actually easier. So I would say understanding my privilege, understanding that I want to and should make a change. And it's not necessarily that I'm the change agent. At that point in time, I saw myself as a facilitator. It was more about bringing the right resources together, helping people access resources, and not necessarily me going in and being like, this is how you have to do it. Again, this one has no idea most of the time. No one does. And I think that's a massive learning, actually.
That's the reality that you are faced with when you start pulling the curtains of many businesses and entrepreneurs. Yeah,
exactly. Absolutely.
People are still figuring it out in the same way as you are.
You know, in German, we have this great saying. It's like we all cook with the same water.
Brilliant. Yeah, exactly. Then you have to, I guess, find the right people, find the right ingredients to put it together. Yeah, it's a brilliant saying, actually. You do. I mean, and that saying, do you apply it to business, to starting a business? Because you do start talking about the privilege. Actually, that's a good point. Is that you do start always with the same water, but how you get to the start, how do you get to the start line, or what resources then you use to cook that, whatever it is, soup, let's call it. It's different regarding to what position you are, what's the social, economical status you have, political status you have. So that varies a bit. And from a kind of was there any, when you met the co-founders of NOCA, what was the kind of the light bulb moment where where you, through, I guess, brainstorming or sharing ideas, what sparked the idea to start NOCA? Because as a business that started first by producing a four-wheeled bike to use in the city from A to B, then transition into a software company. So it's kind of going from hardware to software. It's kind of it's a very difficult transition, I would imagine. But maybe I've seen it done, but it's not easy. So walk me through the process, because that's an interesting part of what I explore in the podcast, the entrepreneurial stories, and because building a startup in a traditional kind of industry isn't easy. So what were the sparks and to start off?
Yeah, I'd love to answer that in two separate ways, let's say.
Sure.
Number one, the transition from hardware to software. It was too long. Looking back, we could have and should have been faster, to be very honest, but that's very easy to say in hindsight. But really what happened is that we saw and we understood how difficult it is to get the right components to the right place at the right time. And I think for established by companies, that's more of a operational and logistical problem. For the company that we were building with a kind of new type of vehicle where there wasn't so many component solutions, where you had very small quantities, it's more of a, let's say, hardware problem. And we first understood the hardware problem because we were struggling with it ourselves. So at first it was about solving a problem that we were having. And then what we did is we went out and we spoke to lots of people in the industry to understand how does production procurement actually work in the cycling industry. And we wrote a white paper around it, actually. It's like this, I think, 20 pages, lots of qualitative interviews. And we learned how the industry is structured, how the supply chain is structured, how everything works. And because we did that, we, number one, understood the challenges in the industry better. And number two, one of the European cycling, the industry association, CIE, at that point, they now merged with another cycling industry association. They came to us and they said, we really love what you did with this white paper. We want to do, or we have to do a study, because there was a time when COVID started and the whole supply chain was just imploding. And they wanted to understand what was happening. So they took our research, we built a research project on top, where we then could do more interviews and really understood what was going on. And that's when we kind of had, it wasn't necessarily a light bulb moment. It was a very, as I said, it was kind of a slow transition where we then said, look, there's something here, like we're struggling and we have to understand what this is. And this is how we then went through multiple different iterations. So we tested out different business models, we tested out different ideas before we landed on product data management inside businesses and across the supply chain. And one other, I think, point that happened during that time is I started first with one co-founder, and then a second one joined us, and he brought in software expertise. So we then had the resources. We not only had the ideas and the inspiration, but we had the resources to also start this. And this is now the main co-founder, Robert, and I. We've been building the software for the last, 2 years, 3 years. Actively throughout all these transitions, well, not the software, but the business. So all of these transitions are in that time frame. And if I can just really quickly, the second question, because I think it was such a brilliant question of there's so many challenges in a traditional industry. And there's two that I can think of two straight away. And that is, we've always done it like this. And the others need to get the data fixed first. It's not me, it's everyone else. And honestly, we haven't solved for this. We're still facing these challenges. I think we will face these challenges because it's human nature. We don't like change. Only crazy people like entrepreneurs like change. In general, we like when things are the way that we're doing it, if it somehow works, until it doesn't. And then that's when change becomes really painful. So ideally, you do it before.
Yeah.
But human nature is kind of, we love our daily life the way that it is.
Yeah, exactly. Change is well, it can be dangerous, if the way, how, if you do something that is not outside of your comfort zone, you have to do something that might lead to failure.
Exactly.
So that is in itself is provides a consequence that is not really desirable, but that's how we are. I guess we are programmed in a way that like that as human beings to I wanted to explore a bit more with you. You said you went through different business kind of iterations, so testing different business models. And one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of leaders will say is that you have to fail, and you have to fail fast so that you can learn, iterate, and grow. And I wanted to kind of understand what was for you that learning process of testing different business models. What were you testing during that process to get to what NOCA is today?
Yeah, as I said, I wish. When my co-founder Robert and I, when we speak about it, we say we wish we did it much faster, because it's hard. I think it's finding this balance between, you see a problem, you want to see if this problem actually exists. You go out and you speak to customers, but in order to speak to customers, you often have to show something, because people don't necessarily have that outside of the box thinking where they can imagine what an alternative reality could look like. So you try to show it, which means you have to build a bit of a product or a bit of something that already creates value. And that takes time. And then you go out and you test it and you get this customer feedback. And this is the hardest part. I mean, customer feedback, market feedback, expert feedback, you try to talk to everyone. And I think the hard part is analyzing this feedback and understanding what it means, because every feedback is giving in a specific context. And sometimes feedback is just bad feedback because people haven't necessarily thought about it in a way that you need them to. They might not even be aware. Sometimes we realize this problem of we always done it like this. They don't even realize that it's a problem and that they're spending, I don't know, half of their day copying one Excel sheet to another Excel sheet so that they can send it out to customers. They don't necessarily identify it as a problem. So the way that you test and the way that you get this feedback needs to inform you how to analyze it. And then the second part as an entrepreneur, number one, analyzing this feedback, I think, is a challenge. And number two, when you get feedback sometimes, or even when you speak to experts, sometimes it's just bad feedback. Like sometimes it's just people not understanding, people being conservative, people being closed-minded, and we've gotten many, many no's, or the feedback of this is never going to work. And I'm really glad that sometimes we chose to ignore that.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. It's a very delicate matter, but I think entrepreneurs have to be able to identify the right feedback. But obviously, you also have this self-selection bias where you just then end up listening to the positive feedback.
Yeah. I think that's why you need to have surround yourself with the right people. Yeah, you know, you have to surround the people that will challenge you, but also support you. Sorry, yeah, go for it.
They need to want you to win. So I think that's it. Like there's a lot of people who don't want other people to win, and you need to find the ones who will be open and critical, but they really want you to win. And that's the ones who can give you good feedback.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because it's feedback. It's tough to receive feedback because, you know, not all of it will be positive. But then you need to understand what is the agenda of the person giving the feedback. Are they truly wanting us to succeed? Are they just not caring about what we do, or are they simply just trying to push us back and not want us to go ahead with this? It could be, and as an entrepreneur, you very, very much focus on this needs to succeed at all costs. I've invested so much of my time, resources. I want this to succeed. And sometimes you have the blinders on, and you can't really distinguish from the good one and the bad one. And that's where you need a team around you, whether it is advisors or co-founders or critical friends, to kind of help you push through that and kind of get some clarity. I wanted you to talk about recognition specifically, and first of all, tell us what it means for you, because it's quite a big deal for a startup.
Honestly, I think we weren't even super aware at the start how big this actually is. Like we've seen it before, and we've seen great companies win this recognition. We were like, yeah, of course, great companies win this. And when we went for it, we were like, okay, we think and we hope we build something great too. So let's try and let's put up our names. And I remember standing at Eurobike with my co-founder Robert, and we were like, wait, what? Did they just say NOCA? We were like, oh my God, this is so exciting. So it's number one. As an entrepreneur, I think you need success moments. It is a bit like, for your soul, for the motivation to keep going. And I think number one, this gave us a massive boost in confidence that we're doing something that actually makes sense. And number two, that we keep going in a tough environment, that we are onto something. And number two is we still had, so in September then we went to Taichung Bike Week, and we still had people coming up to us and be like, yeah, I saw you on the Eurobike Award, like congratulations. So it was great. It gave us a lot of visibility, and I think it gave us more credibility as a startup and as a young company. I think sometimes people are also kind of looking at you and they're like, let's just see where this is going. Like, it's interesting, it could be useful, but let's see where this is going and if they can survive and if they make this a success before I buy in. Because obviously there's sometimes a risk involved in using something new and something that is innovative and different. And I think it gave us a bit of this boost of, okay, guys, you can jump on this train. It's okay, you'll be safe.
Yeah. I mean, and so I mean that's one of the huge benefits of awards. Like, gives you that credibility, gives that recognition to the peers of the industry, but also, we don't shy away here from the challenges. So, and at the same time, there's also the lows of running a business, running a startup. So I wanted to understand what have been so far kind of the biggest challenges. I mean, that many entrepreneurs face in their early days, and really how you overcome them, because that's where the learning comes through.
I forgot where to start. Yes. There have been many challenges, there have been many lows. Honestly, we just talked about it last night. We had a week where we got 5 no's from potential customers, partners, whatever we wanted to do. So Those weeks are tough. I'm not going to lie. Those weeks are really, really tough.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, number one, I'm super grateful that I have a co-founder and that we are in a team that still appreciates my God.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, well done.
That like
Yeah,
we
correct.
said, like we still appreciate each other, we still respect each other, we still get along with each other, even though we do often discuss and disagree. Like it's not all roses and ponies. um we have tough
Yeah,
conversations and we fight about things as well, but we establish, I think, a really good base to deal with these lows. And I think, to maybe have a very specific example, the process that we usually go through is we try something and it doesn't work, and that's a low, and we're frustrated and we're upset. We give ourselves 5 minutes to be upset. It's okay to really be frustrated,
yeah,
to hate things, to scream and to be angry, and then we try to reflect on what happened and why. What could we have done better? Could we have done something better? Or is this just a product of the situation? And then we try and improve, and we try to do it differently. The example I wanted to give is that I remember, it must have been like a year and a half, maybe even 2 years ago, I spoke to a CEO of a OEM brand, like a cycling business. And I
yeah,
was so happy that I got this meeting. It was a cold outreach on LinkedIn. He replied and we had a conversation, and I got to pitch NOCA as a potential solution. And I did a shit job. It was so shit. I got out of this meeting and I was like, oh my God, I don't think you understood what we're doing. I couldn't explain what we're doing. And he got back to me. He's like, yeah, this is interesting, but maybe not now. And I was like, I was so upset with myself, and I was embarrassed. I was super embarrassed because me, as one of the founders, I couldn't explain properly what our solution is. But then I got over my embarrassment and I kept reaching out. And once we kind of had a better way to communicate, we had a better way to show, I went back and I showed it again. And now we're handing in a proposal to be one of their leading systems. If it's going to work or not, I don't know. They will let me know. But I think it shows that, A, don't give up just because something went shit.
precisely. Yeah,
Use my
precisely. Yeah.
French. And that you are allowed to feel like a failure, you're allowed to feel embarrassed, but then, you know what? If you don't remember this in 5 years and it doesn't make a difference, get over it, keep going, and it will be okay, and you will be okay.
Yeah, I think that's a massive learning lesson there, because if it's there will be setbacks. It's inevitable, and there's been moments where the words cannot come properly out of your mouth to explain a concept, for instance. But I guess through perseverance, through persistence, over a period of time, you manage to get that potential client around to sit again on the table and to explain like a second time. And I think that persistence is sometimes is underrated. People do it once, do it twice, and then nothing comes out of it, and they just like give up. And maybe you need to push a bit more on that, because it just it's a kind of a testing trial, and you might not get the first time, the second time, third time, but if you keep doing it, you're putting in the effort, you're putting the reps, and you'll get to there. Whether it is reaching out through a cold outreach on LinkedIn, whether it is testing business ideas, it's called repetition. Yes. Creates perfection. Whether
exactly.
whether if there is such a thing as perfection, but it creates a better workflow, a better outcomes, I think, in overall.
Absolutely.
When you put in the work. And I think this bridge brilliantly to, I think, a question that I wanted to ask you, because you talked about kind of the in a little kind of in broad brushstrokes, kind of the the little turmoil that you went through, feeling anger about the situation, not being able to express fully the concept, and then just trying to overcome that emotion. Do you have any personal habits or mindsets that help you, in these situations to stay focused, stay productive, or stay creative?
Yeah. I think two of them I really quickly mentioned already. Number one, feel what you're feeling, like that. Like let those 5 minutes, have those 5 minutes, be upset about it, be angry about it, and let it out, and that's okay. And I think number two, this whole mindset or this whole question of, okay, is this going to be relevant and life-changing in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years, whatever you want to take, because you realize that most of these failures will be okay, and you handle them, you work with them, and you will make the best out of it, because honestly you don't really have another choice either. So it's okay, just you just go and you work with it. But I think what helps a lot when you struggle, or when you face, it's not necessarily struggle, but when you face challenges, especially in your work life or your entrepreneurial journey, whatever that looks like, I think is two things. Number one, social outlets. Make sure, or I try now very actively to really take care of my relationships with my family, my relationships with my friends, my relationship with my partner. Because I think when I started, I used to be very much focused on just, we need to build the business. And that can get really unhealthy very fast. I also saw how in the beginning I was super productive. And then at some point, I feel like I almost stopped functioning because it was just, I tried to do everything really well. I failed at doing that. And that failure got into my head. So I kind of, like this productivity that I had stopped working. And now I feel like, because I try to then focus on building that surrounding value of relationships. And then number two was exercise, that I wanted to say, that I started actively exercising, not necessarily for looking good, but to have an outlet for emotions mainly. Like it gets stuff out of you. You feel great afterwards. You feel happy with yourself. And having these outlets outside of work, I think then come into work, that you have a clear mind, that you can be productive, that you work through some of those things that maybe bother you or where you see a challenge, that you have that balance, that you have these moments of positivity, even if they in a specific time period don't happen at work, you have them somewhere else. So it helps you push through here, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's brilliant what you just said. It's like gold dust, because it brilliantly encapsulates kind of I guess a growth curve that happened in your own journey, understanding that work is not all or nothing. Being productive by the sake of being productive, it's not in itself a recipe for success. And as you said, putting together value in the relationships, in nurturing the people around you, putting your body, your mind together as a whole piece, rather than just two pieces existing separately. It's I think is a game changer, because the body, the brain and the body work together, and the relationships are a brilliant way to nurture your well-being.
Absolutely. And what I found really interesting, and I reflected quite a bit on this. Any podcast you hear, any blog post you read, they all tell you this. It's not new knowledge. It's not something that I discovered or anyone discovered, right? But I feel like everyone has to go a little bit through that struggle and that pain to learn it for themselves, because sometimes you don't even realize that you're in that kind of phase where you only focus on work and you don't do anything else. So I feel like even though you know this deep down, and even though everyone tells you that that's what really is the good thing to do, somehow we don't learn from other mistakes, and we have to do that ourselves.
Well, yeah, it's part of human nature. It's sometimes, and it comes with so I've in my past life I used to be a teacher, so I'm used to repetition. It's part of learning. Doing something once is not enough, and you have to introduce different ways of showing something, whether it's visually, whether it is through movement, whether it's through actually doing it physically. It kind of allows the person learning, wherever you're teaching them, or as a person trying to do something new, allows them to incorporate that learning much faster. And I think that's, I guess we have to go through that at some point. You can't learn life just by reading books. It doesn't happen like that.
That's really true. Unfortunately, honestly, life would be so much easier.
Yeah, I mean, and then there's also the interesting, you mentioned about, your entrepreneur journey, and this is something that I've listened and learned through listening to other podcasts, is that as an entrepreneur, an entrepreneur that really has kind of walked through different failures, walked through setbacks, I think comes out a better person and a better entrepreneur compared to a person that just has many, like a quick succession of successes without having going through setbacks, because the kind of going through setbacks, going through failures allows to have a bigger perspective and kind of a bigger understanding of how things actually work. And that's why people say failure is actually a great tool for learning, because it allows you to know, well, this doesn't work. Why this is not working? Let's improve and iterate.
Yeah. And honestly, any person who tells you that they only have successes is one of three things. Number one, they're so privileged that they're cushioned from everything. And that's probably the very, very tiny amount of people. Number two, they're lying. Or number three, they are not realizing failure for failure, and they're just not reflective, and they don't learn, and they're just in really big luck, I guess.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Very good point. There you go. Very good point. I wanted to now understand, kind of bringing it back to the industry impact of NOCA. From where you stand, how do you see the digitalization shaping the future of cycling manufacturing over the years, over the next 5 years, for instance? Because that's the space you are in at the moment. So, like, what do you see? What change you see happening?
Yeah. I think when you look at the first kind of conversations we had a couple of years ago until now, there has been a lot more visibility to the topic. A lot more people have started talking about the topic, because it's not like NOCA came in and we're the ones who put digitalization on the agenda. No. Like, these problems that we're talking about have persisted for a very long time. There are solutions, there have been solutions, and they have worked or tried to work on this massive net not to crack, right? But I think that the conversation has accelerated because of a few different things. I think COVID played a role. I think that companies realized managing data flows across teams, across company borders, across the supply chain has become a massive, not nice to have, but must have. So I think that kind of showed the holes. I think that then companies started to go out and try to look for solutions. We have seen companies introduce new software and systems. There have been some really cool examples of companies that are working really efficiently now. I think regulation plays a big role. Regulation pushes the industry to digitalize so that you can meet regulations. AI is the biggest thing that has happened in the past 10 years in terms of a paradigm shift. It has gotten to a stage where AI is now being used by almost everyone in their normal lives. It is going to be a prerequisite in a company to manage processes, data, and to kind of drive digitalization. But in order to leverage that technology, you as a business has to have a specific basis of clear data that is properly structured, that can be machine read, let's say, or that can feed an AI to get good results. And you need to start preparing for that. And you should have started 10 years ago, really. But I think that's going to be, it's not just going to be a topic around, oh, how can I write marketing texts? with AI. It's about how do I show up in prompts? How do I show up in answers by algorithms / by large language models? It's how can I leverage it in making my processes more efficient, more automated? How can I generate more insights? How can I generate more analytics? And kind of exploring these business cases, I think, is going to be the next big thing. And then after exploring the business cases, so again, how does it actually save me money, or how does it make me more money? How do I implement it? How do I do the change management, etc.? And I think the industry deep down, everyone knows. Again, it's just hard to actually implement, and it's hard to stop talking and start doing.
You mentioned a few moments ago that companies will say to you, well, this is not my responsibility. You have competing companies trying, if wanting someone else to start rolling the ball. How does collaboration play a part in this? Because you need to have an ecosystem where brands, businesses work together and use the same method of sharing data, so that is easily accessible. So how do you overcome that? Because you have to convince multiple players to be using one system.
Yeah. Before I answer that question, just really quickly, NOCA, the NOCA portal, our solution, it works by itself, right? It works without anyone else using it, because there is always a business case inside. There's always a way to work more efficiently, more digital, more automated inside your own company and across your own teams. So that is usually how we start conversations with companies. Right. So we work with them to understand, what are you doing right now? What are the challenges? And how can our solution solve these challenges, independent of what your suppliers are doing and independent of what your customers are doing? So it's kind of creating that awareness inside of what can I do right now. So that works. But we, as a solution, we have a massive opportunity when it comes to network effects. And that's exactly what you were referring to, in terms of there is exponential value of everyone and each additional company using the NOCA portal, because you can share data. You have a specific data flow from the start of the supply chain to the end of the supply chain if everyone is using our solution. It works without it as well. It's just much harder and much more difficult, and you have less value created in the end. But there's two ways that we work with this extra value, or how we want to unlock this extra value. Number one, again, focus on the internal business case, because in the end, you can only sell a solution that, for the person who is implementing it, either creates cost savings or additional revenue. So you have to show how this solution in the end creates a business case for yourself. So audit and analyze own processes before doing others to do so. And number two is then going out and building a business case around that co-opetition. So what does every actor actually gain in using the same system? Helping them understand that gain, quantifying that gain, so they inside can lobby for that solution and can show their board, their stakeholders, their managers, this is what we can do better, this is what we would save, this is what we would unlock in terms of value.
Right. So this co-opetition is is a merge of collaboration and competition. So how would you merge this?
Yeah, so I think in the end, we as an industry, and this is separate from NOCA, right? If we talk about co-opetition as an industry, or an industry level, I think, again, having a business case, understanding what that gives me if I cooperate with my competition. And number two, it's to be very clear on what we are competing on. If you look at, I hate it actually that I'm going to say that, but if you look at automotive, and you have production chains or production systems that produce the same specific components for different companies, you can see that they're not necessarily competing on the production method, for example, which is interesting. If you look at cycling, it's very similar. I mean, everyone is kind of producing in the same factories, and they probably know that, and they're probably very specifically actually use those factories and invest in those factories, knowing that they also then have these this knowledge, etc., for the competitors, because that's not necessarily what we're competing on. We're often competing in cycling. We're competing on the look of the bike, we're competing on brand. We're not sometimes maybe competing on components, but let's be honest, in the end, you have a set of component manufacturers that you pick from, and customers prefer one over the other. So it's really just about which customer segment you're focusing on. So I think we need to very, very openly and critically look at what makes me different. And is it my product data? Probably not. Is my brand value? Very likely. So understanding that, and then understanding what can I save as my business case if I actually have a way or an industry platform or a solution where product data is efficiently managed and shared, I think could solve that competition challenge.
Yeah, it's a good point because, as a cycling industries, when you compare it to the automotive industries, it's a very small kind of, small industry in comparison to the automotive industry. But when you join collaboration to that element and think about growing the potential customer base by sharing resources, sharing data, with the ambition to grow the pie that we're trying to get to, growing the customer base. That should be the driver of brands, the industry coming together and help each other grow. Yes, and then obviously, there will be the brand element where you need to differentiate yourself from others, and then you have a competitive edge. But that comes after, I would say. First, think about growing the customer base, and then differentiate yourself, because that's where is the key driver for more revenue, for more profit. I would say, yeah.
If I can turn a critical eye on the industry, I think that's a problem that somehow, and I'm still kind of an outsider, right? Like I'm
yeah.
When you look at people that've usually worked in the industry for 20 or 30 years, once you're in it, you're in it. We never get out of this, man. So I am still exactly. So I'm still relatively new. So I wouldn't claim to know all the ins and outs, but it was just an observation, and some of the feedback we've had in terms of the industry, I think, struggles with growing that pie because you have views and hardcore views of what cycling is and what it should be. So, for example, you have your hardcore sports fanatics. They're like, no, we only do gravel and mountain. Everything else is not cycling. You had the massive pushback when e-bikes came in, and how difficult it was for e-bikes to kind of have their way. Now they're the leading sales factors. I remember going into my very local retailer shop in Berlin-Weißensee, telling him that I'm going to buy an e-bike, and he almost threw me out backwards because he's like, if e-bikes become honestly, he's like, if we sell 50% or 50% of my sales become e-bikes, or people come here and want e-bikes, I will stop because that's not a bike. And then you have the same with cargo bikes, right? It's like, no, that's not bikes. When you think about city logistics and what great solution cargo bikes are for city logistics, it's like, no, this is not cycling. And now kind of understanding how can we grow this pie and get out of this, we have this very specific notion of cycling is, rather than, hey, everyone who's using a bicycle in one way or another is a cyclist, and we're this great community that everyone can join, the same way that automotive does, because people identify each other based on their car, right? It's like, oh my God, you drive a Mercedes. Yeah, me too. It's just, I don't understand why we make this very stark distinction and have this very set view on what cycling is and shouldn't be, rather than being super inclusive.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's a point that I like to have an answer on as well, but I can't because it's quite a complex one.
And I'm sure there's interests that I don't understand. I'm sure there's business interests, there's individual interests. I'm sure. I just haven't understood them.
I think there is also a way of it. I guess how it plays out in the media. Who gets to have a say on what cycling is, and the media definitely has a role to play on that. And if big outlets are just showing you what very small percentage of people want cycling to be, then that's what cycling becomes in the mind of the mainstream population. Yeah, and I think that there is, I think we are opening the doors to better understanding from where I stand as a consumer, looking at how the media is showing cycling, like whether it is sport level, whether it is mobility, commuting. I think it's broadening, and there are brands already doing that very well. But I think as an industry, we need to be more inclusive for sure, to bring that, bring that self-awareness of that sometimes it lacks.
Yeah, absolutely.
As an outsider, well, let's call it an outsider, but that isn't necessarily I don't want this to be defining of the conversation. But when you started NOCA, and in a position you are now, is there anything that you learned along the way that you wished you'd known at the beginning?
God, yes. Again, you're always smarter in hindsight. I think I wish we would have iterated faster, and we would have focused earlier.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, we kind of tried to do everything, right? When we started kind of the switch from hardware to software, we were doing a specific software, and then we added things because people were telling us, oh, we need this and this and this. So again, understanding when you take feedback, when you act on customer feedback, and when you say, cool, let's put that on the roadmap and we're going to do that later, not right now. It kind of plays into what I was telling about not being able to describe what we do, because we tried to do everything and too much, and we didn't have that kind of very clear message and that clear value proposition of what we're doing. So I think number one, focusing earlier. And I still struggle with this. This is mainly my co-founder. I'm one of those people, someone comes to you and they're like, oh my God, it would be great if we do X, Y, Z. And I'm like, oh my God, it would be. Which is great to have in a team, right? You need both kind of personalities. But I'm still, I wish me specifically, because he's been pretty good at it, but me specifically, that I could have focused earlier. I think what I wish I would have done differently earlier is to say no, or to say I can't do it, or to ask for help. I think I had this view of I need to be able to do everything, and I need to be able to be good at everything and do everything, which then delayed us as a team more often than not, because I am sometimes more of a perfectionist. I would go into really small detail, and that kind of then prolongs this process of testing and iterating. So I think that I sometimes have been, and sometimes still are, because it's still something that I'm practicing, our blocker of how to get things done fast, and done is better than perfect.
Exactly.
And I think that's really the three things: focus, asking for help and saying no, and going away from perfection and kind of getting the momentum and being faster. I think that's the three things that I would have loved to have done differently. Again, it's one of those things, everyone tells you about it, but you kind of do it anyways because you don't realize.
Yeah, I guess you have to go. Yeah, like we discussed it, you have to go through that learning process. It can give you some, having that awareness can give you some quicker turnaround kind of timings, so you can quickly acknowledge, yes, this is what is happening, this is wrong, let's try and change this around. But I guess you do have to go through it in some ways. It also is interesting, as a founder-led business, founders are intricately involved in the minutiae, in every detail of the business, in the early days, because you need to have a little bit of understanding of everything. But then, as you said, that can also stop or slow the processes and slow the progress. And is there any way or mechanism that you you use to kind of have awareness of this? Or like you mentioned those 3 points, but is there something, a mechanism that on a day-to-day you use, or stop, I'm doing this, let me pivot or stand back and let someone else do it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think in general, the conversations we have as a co-founding team are really helpful in opening up the space to be vulnerable and say, well, two things actually, to give feedback and be vulnerable. I think my co-founder has had a massive role in reflecting this back to me and letting me know that I'm doing this, even though I might have in that situation been like, no, but I need to do it that way, and that's super important. But he, it's this person. When you talk about co-founding relationships, it's actually true. It's this person that you are most critical of, but that you also most appreciate in a way, because they can give you that feedback without you taking it too you always take it personal, don't get me wrong, but there is a space where you take this feedback because you know this person is giving you this feedback because everyone wants the company to succeed. So it's not malicious. It is not critical on you as a person, but it's very productive and constructive. So I think the mechanism is really listening, like giving space for this feedback in that relationship, being open to that feedback, and then acting on that feedback and holding each other accountable. And again, sometimes it works better than other times. But I think that's super important. And I think number two is we have been incredibly lucky with the team that we're building. We have developers who are taking on responsibility, that have from the very start kind of understood that we as a founding team, we never put ourselves on this level of we know everything and you know nothing and you just do what we tell you to do. No, we as a founding team, we go in and we say, yo, we have no idea. Not really. You have to also build a bit of trust in your team, like being like,
exactly,
okay, we got to be fine. But I think we are very open to feedback. We are very reflective, and we do openly say when we don't know something. And that's why you have a team, so that they are better at specific things than you are, and that they are the experts and tell you, hey, we should do it that way and not that way. So I think having that respect and trust for the team is really helpful. I think is focusing on getting people in who take on responsibility, who are better at what they're doing than you are, and who think outside the box. So I think especially in a small team at early stage, you don't just need people who execute simply on what you're doing, but who also challenge you, who understand the vision and who understand what we're trying to do, so they can make suggestions of how it should be done. And I think shout out to our first developer who's worked with that. He's been such an integral part of our growth and how we developed our product and being able to do what we're doing. He's been great.
Brilliant. I mean, it's I think it's how you articulate it is brilliantly highlights the the growing pains, and also the dilemmas that you're faced constantly as a in a startup scenario, but also that what you shared can be applied to anyone in their respective lives, because making decisions, trusting others that want the best for you, trusting people that are more knowledgeable than you to help you and give you advice, all of this is of value to whether someone is starting a business, whether he's one leading a multi-dollar business, because it's part of recognizing that we don't have all the answers, but if we work together, we can be greater than just the individual.
And if I can, I have one more point. Just when you were talking, you inspired me for one point that I had reflected on before as well. There was a situation a couple of months ago where in the team, as a co-founding team, we were talking, and I remember my co-founder said something to me that at the time, it really offended me, actually. So he said, look, Anna, you're really good at networking. You're really good at talking to people, and you get people coming in, and I'm really good at then implementing and showing that we can do things properly. And I was just like, wait, what? I was like, what are you talking about? Of course I can implement, and of course I can do all of these things. I took it as a personal reflection that I can only talk. So I took it as I'm a yapper, which reflects more on me than on the co-founder in the end, actually, what I think is valuable. But what this process started in me is to appreciate what I'm good at, and that it's not given, because when you're good at something, you think it's given to everyone, and you think that everyone is good at it because you're good at it, right? And understanding that that's not true, and that there's massive value in being able to talk to people, being able to convince people, being able to draw people in, and being interested in you and the company and the product is actually, it is a talent, and it is something that's super valuable, even though I might not be the best at managing a very detailed spreadsheet and all the different spaces around a project. So I think learning and appreciating what I'm good at and seeing the value in it, rather than wanting to be good at everything and anything, was super helpful in then going into the 3 points I've said of saying no, asking for help, being less perfect, and delegating tasks and being like, yep, you're better than me at that. Let's do that. And I think that had been really helpful, actually.
It does for each founder to learn or recognize their strengths, and when I think when that works best is when each founder or each member of the founding team can have strengths that complement each other. So not when two people might have different strengths, might clash heads, but they bring their expertise that ultimately complement each other. And then it's a great way to kind of highlight that. And thanks for sharing that. Brilliant insight. And now I wanted to ask you a question that I'll ask of all my guests, which is, what does success mean to you personally?
It's very tough, because I think it has changed quite a bit over the course of the past 5 years. I think I used to be a person who very much defines herself and sees self-actualization in work. So that the business success is my success, and that's what drove me in the beginning. And I think that's cool, that's okay, that's helpful. Like, I want to succeed, I want to solve this problem. There is this problem that has been around for so long, and it's been so complex, and I kind of got fixed on it, and I want to fix it. I actually have I made this joke with it's a potential customer that I talked to a couple of weeks ago, and I remember he said, look, Anna, I have 7 to 10 years until I retire, and I don't think that this will be fixed. I'm like, watch me. And now I have pressure.
Brilliant.
So I think success in terms of solving a problem is great. I think in terms of business, success is, number one, it is a financial stable company. I think money is important. I think that's clear. I think that's fine to say. I think it's bullshit when people say, oh, it's not about the money. Yes, it is about the money. You need to, if you want to have a business, if you want to solve this problem, you need to make it financially sustainable. But I think that there is a trade-off between that financial sustainability and happy customers and a happy team. So I think success is when I can put all of these 3 things together. So I have a good company that's running well. I have customers who are like, oh my God, we love your product. And I have a team who says, I love coming to work every day. So that's success for me in a business sense. And I think success for me in a more personal sense. And I think that's what's been added much more into the mix in the last couple of years is quality time. Just spending quality time with, again, friends, family, my partner, random ass people I've never met before, because that's interesting, So adding that,
you never know what you might learn.
Exactly, and having a great time, not only focusing on work and struggling and facing challenges and solving problems, but also just sometimes having a great time.
Yeah, and I wanted to. You kind of, that then poses the question. How do you balance all of this? Because that's the eternal question that founders, leaders, entrepreneurs, myself ask daily. How do you balance this? I have my own take on it, but what is your take on how do you balance all of this?
I don't know. I think you go through phases. I think there is a phase where sometimes the business needs more attention because, I don't know, you're implementing a massive project or you're writing a big proposal. Then other times you kind of wind down a bit and you say, look, it's fine to send this email in the morning. No one will care. And I think it's about understanding that there will be different focus times, but that overall, when you look at it over time, you kind of balanced out between well-being, like your personal well-being, your relationship well-being, and your business well-being. And I think for me, what I've found is, again, in business, it's kind of like in business, I think we haven't found it quite yet. And I think what I really want to do and what I try to kind of do is, again, appreciating my own skill set, asking for help and celebrating the small wins. I think we're really bad in celebrating the wins because we know what else we need to do. Like, you have a moment of success and then you're like, this is great.
I have the same problem,
but we need 9 more of this. So it's really creating that moment. I think in relationships, what I learned, what has given me a lot more balance is to communicating appreciation. Actually, I'm a person who's incredibly loyal, but I'm very German in that sense, stereotypically German. Sorry. You know how Germans are not known to communicate a lot about their feelings and their emotions. Right. So I've actively taken a stance to tell the people around me that they're actually pretty cool people.
Really?
And I think for well-being and kind of focusing on myself, it's this love-hate relationship I have with exercise. I can see how it cleans my head. I can see how I feel much better when I have this outlet, and how aggression, anxiety, upsetness kind of builds up in me when I don't necessarily have that outlet. But then, getting there and doing things is also very hard. But I push myself, and it gets like I can see how that really balances me out as a person.
Yeah, it's a matter of choice, really. You do. Yeah, balance is it's somewhat sometimes elusive. You have to prioritize things that need the most attention right now, and some things will just have to, wait, really. And it's a choice that we make every day. It's like to what we want to prioritize here, what we most value here.
And that's what makes it so hard. That's what makes it so hard, because you have to make the same choice every day. And if sometimes it's hard, you're like, oh my God, why do I have to go to spinning class?
Well, yeah, I guess, that's a question that everyone needs to ask themselves, is the why. Why am I doing this? And, when you are an entrepreneur, the business, you have a clear why you're doing it. Whether you are relationships, that why is, as long as it's crystal clear in your mind, then it's easier to communicate to others. It's easier to not even have to think about it. Sometimes you just you do something because you do it because it's the thing that needs to be done, and you don't think twice about it. Anyway, it's part of the process, part of the journey.
Totally.
So now, Anna, we come to a point of a podcast where every guest leaves a question to my next guest, not knowing who they are. And the question that was left for you is the following: what actions are you taking to ensure your own longevity, or maybe the longevity of the business you're running?
My own longevity. Oh dear. So, fun fact, my granddad is 92, right? And he's still fit. So my granddad still goes to the gym 3 times a week. He has his friends that he sees at least once a week. So he has this balance of exercise and social engagement. So I think maybe the way that I would like to think about it is that now I'm building the base for a happy and healthy life when I'm older. Because I think the worst that can happen to you is when your mind is still fresh, but your body can't keep up. And it's a shame if your body is still fine and your mind can't keep up, even though sometimes you can't actually help that. So I think for me, it's exercising, it's eating mostly healthy. I love chocolate, don't get me wrong.
Mostly.
Exactly. And people who don't, I think that's very suspicious. No, I'm joking. But I think it's kind of setting the stage in a younger age so that you can build on that basis when you're older. I think what I can do better is sleep. I think my sleep has, in general, I'm sometimes on my phone far too much, for example. So that's something I would change in terms of longevity. And in terms of business, what action am I taking to ensure business longevity? I mean, honestly, what actions am I not taking? Like, I feel like we're still somewhat young as a company, so and even established companies have to survive. And I think doing my best. I think taking on the feedback that I get and trying to do even better in a way. I think that's what I can do to ensure the business will hopefully survive very long.
Yeah. I mean, those sounds like very good steps, both personally and professionally. You need to have a good base. Sleep, food, exercise, kind of a good base that you can enjoy life. And professionally, you have to build a culture where people feel welcome, where and also financially it needs to be able to sustain itself for a long term. So it kind of is a combination of factors which we discuss, I think, quite a bit over this period of. So yeah, it's I think it's, and now that we are going to average life is expanding. We're living longer. You mentioned your grandfather is now 92, still very much, by the sounds of it, active, and that's a great way. Being active, having a kind of network of friends, relationships that you care for and they care for you. Ultimately, that purpose, wherever it drives you, the motivation, the why, that is also a great way to, I think, achieve a better state of mind, of well-being.
Totally.
Brilliant. So I now want to ask you the question, what question would you like to leave to my next guest?
Okay. So, how we talked about that we spend far too little time celebrating our wins. So from your next guest, I would like to know, what are the 3 major wins or micro wins that you had in the last month? And just make sure to celebrate yourself. Tap yourself on the shoulder. I would like them to tap themselves on the shoulder on the podcast.
Brilliant. Yeah. It's and I guess it doesn't have to be something big. It can be something every day, I suppose.
It could be, I was going to say, it could be either, it could be a business thing of, oh, we got a new client. It could be, I made it to spinning class every single week in the last month. Or, dude, I made the best, I don't know, tofu fried rice of my life.
Brilliant. Yeah, exactly. That it doesn't have to be, it can be something that in a way is meaningful to your life. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Because at the end of the day, like, those small wins are the ones that perhaps even matter the most, because it's what makes you tick, is what makes you enjoy life a bit more, and the small steps that get you to the big wins, if you will.
Exactly.
Brilliant. So with that, Anna, we come to the end of our conversation. I wanted to say a huge thank you for your energy is contagious, and your enthusiasm for the business, for life. There's a real hunger to succeed, and that comes through the conversation. So thank you for sharing that with us today.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time. It's been great chatting with you.
If Anna's story made you pause, reflect, or rethink how you approach your work, your relationships, or even your next ride, then here is my ask to you. Share this episode with 2 friends or 2 people who would love to hear it too. And don't forget to follow Ride to Success wherever you listen to the podcast, so you never miss another episode. And before you go, I want to invite you personally into the next conversation and ask yourself, what are the 3 wins, big or small, you've had in the past month? Celebrate them. You deserve the moment. And thank you for spending time with us.